Welcome, everybody. My name is Jeff McGinnis. Very excited for you to be joining us this evening as we embark on our 2022 Winery Spotlight Series. As many of you are aware, some of you have been with us for some time and have attended various versions of these spotlights dating back some time. But these spotlights are a way for us collectively, the WineStyles stores, to share a winery that is near and dear to our hearts, share their story, their philosophy, but more importantly, share their wines. It's also a great opportunity for us to share usually an expanded version of what we normally carry in their stores as well. Before I introduce this month's spotlight, a couple different rules as we move forward. The first one is that if you're participating virtually, we ask that you stay muted. That does not mean we don't want you to ask questions. In fact, we highly encourage that. We encourage comments, questions, observations, whatever they might be. We just ask that you do so in that comment section. We'll do our best to monitor those comments and then facilitate the questions as they go along. I know some of our store owners might jump in with questions. That's fine as well. But if they have questions and they want to put them in the comments or questions from you via them, just go ahead and put those in the comments and we'll help facilitate those. Secondly, all of the stores have these wines in the stores, as we always have for our National Winery Spotlight programs. As much as we love sharing our passion for the wineries and the wines themselves with you this evening, we love it even more when you buy the wines. Take them home, try them, take them to a friend's house, share them, have them come back and buy them. At the end of the day, we love wine, but we love selling wine equally as much. So with no further ado, we are very excited to launch our 2022 Winery Spotlight Series with a winery that has been a partner of WineStyles probably dating back over 15 years, even long before my involvement with the company. It's Clos LaChance Winery, and we have done wine clubs with them. We've done semi-exclusive labels with them. We've done winery spotlights with them where we featured their wines. But tonight we're doing a little different version of that. We will hear a lot about the winery's history and philosophy and geography and everything that makes them very special. And they'll talk a little bit about their wines as well. But we had an opportunity to partner with them and have them create for us some wines that are exclusive to WineStyles. These are what we call the WineStyles styles wines. And so many of you know the breakdown of the style wines are our 6 main styles: crisp, silky, and rich on the white side, fruity, mellow, and bold on the red side. And so they partnered with us, made some wines that we feel best emulate or benchmark wines for us in those style wines. So as we move along, we'll be having those wines. They'll be telling the story of Clos LaChance, but they'll also be talking about the wines that they helped create with our assistance as well. It was a great process, fun process. We got to try the wines, give feedback, have them send back tweaked versions of them, and ultimately settle on wines that we love to have in our stores that are private and exclusive. So I'm going to shut up here in a second. I do want to introduce our special guests. They will talk a little bit more about themselves, share their background, and share their passion for wine, and help us facilitate this as we taste and try the wines. We have Jason Robideaux. He is the VP of Winery and Vineyard Operations from Clos LaChance. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. How's everybody doing?
Perfect. And then we have David DeBow. He's the super wine extraordinaire guy at Crafted Brands. We've done some other things with him as well through that, and he helped us facilitate this partnership as well. So welcome, Jason and David, I should say. I'm going to hand it off to you. I'm going to mute it. That way you can kind of walk us through these wines and share the wonderful story of Clos LaChance.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to everybody for joining. I'm excited to be a part of this. It's been a fun journey to put these wines together and work with all the folks at WineStyles. I'm going to kind of walk through a little bit about Clos LaChance itself, history, where we are, our terroir region, the wines, of course. And David, please feel free to jump in if I get going at 100 miles an hour or if I miss something that you think is important. But we'll kind of walk through all of these, and hopefully you guys can learn a little bit about Clos LaChance and these great wines that we put together. As Jeff said, actually, I've been with Clos LaChance for just about 15 years now. And when I first came on, one of the first projects, wines that we were working on were some wines for the WineStyles folks. So I've been around with all the folks at WineStyles for quite a long time. We've been working together in partnership. So it was really fun to revisit this and create some wines in collaboration with them, get their feedback, and really produce these really nice, Central Coast styles of wine. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about the winery itself. So just a quick history of the winery before we jump into the first wine. Clos LaChance is a family-owned and operated winery. The name itself, Clos, is French for a small fenced-in area or a vineyard, which was the Murphy family that you see there in the picture. That was their first vineyard. It was a 3/4 acre Chardonnay vineyard in their backyard in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And they started producing wine in the 80s. And they took, that kind of idea of this backyard, the small fenced in vineyard to create their name. And then LaChance is Brenda Murphy, who is Bill's wife. That's her maiden name. So they put that together and created Clos LaChance. It's, as I said, a multi-generational family wine business. They started in the 80s, but their daughters have worked in the business for a long time with them. And they definitely have the idea of creating this long-term sustainable winery vineyard based on estate vineyards and have it be multi-generational, which is a pretty rare thing in the wine industry these days, with lots of wineries being snatched up and becoming corporate and conglomerates and all these big things. So the idea of having actually a family estate is pretty cool. So before I get too in depth into the winery, why don't we crack that first bottle and jump into the first wine, which is our crisp white wine blend. As you guys will see with each of the blends as we go through, they're really unique. And what we have on our estate is all of these great varietals to work with. We have over 18 varietals on our estate. So we have these tools, as I like to call them as a winemaker, that we can make these blends. We're not bound by the restriction of calling it a Sauvignon Blanc or calling it a Cabernet with a white wine blend or a red wine blend. We can create really the best wine possible, and we can hit these unique styles like a crisp or a rich style of wine. So it was really fun to be able to create these and be able to utilize the varietals that we actually have on our estate vineyards here. So the first one, the crisp, is 50% Chenin Blanc, 30% Viognier, and 20% Sauvignon Blanc. It is the only wine in the series that is actually 100% aged and fermented in stainless steel tank. So it doesn't have any of that barrel influence, and that's where it's really going to get its crisp style. When we think of crisp, we think of a light, Sauvignon Blanc, something that you would drink on the porch, something you would drink on a hot day, or have with an acidic meal or something that would cut through it. And that was our idea and our kind of backbone of creating this wine. Chenin Blanc is, a pretty neutral white. You think of it with sparkling wine, you think of it even with dessert wines. And as a standalone, table wine, it tends to be somewhat of a more toned back varietal. It's not very strong. It's not overpowering. It's not really aromatic, and it's not really heavy on the palate. So it's a perfect, backbone to a wine that you want to be light and crisp and just elegant and something soft. It could be kind of your everyday, white wine. And then Viognier is kind of the polar opposite. Viognier is a viscous wine. Viognier has good tannic structure to it, and it's very floral, aromatic white wine. So you get orange blossom and you get violet and you get all of these, really bright floral characteristics to it. But on the palate, it's lean, it's got some weight to it, but it's crisp and it's long, and it's something that will hold the backbone of the palate for you. And then the Sauvignon Blanc is just your classic, Central Coast style, where it's your lemon limes, your lime rind. It has a hint of grassiness to it, although in the Central Coast of California, your Sauvignon Blanc is by far, from your New Zealand style, which is really grassy. The Central Coast really is known for its citrus. So it has that grassy element to it, but really what we're looking for is bringing that citrus to the florals and the orange blossom and all the stuff that the Viognier and the Chenin Blanc bring to the party itself. So as you guys sip on that, we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit about the winery itself. Clos LaChance is a beautiful estate winery. We're located in the Central Coast of California in the Santa Clara Valley. Actually, as the crow flies, we're about 10 miles from the Pacific Ocean, although we do have a giant Santa Cruz mountain range in between us and the ocean. We're actually really close, so we do get the coastal influence, and being set in the valley here, it's actually created this really beautiful, wine country setting. When people come to California, they think Napa, Sonoma, Paso Robles, but Santa Clara Valley is one of the fastest growing wine regions in the state of California, and it has a lot of very similar settings to Mediterranean. That's kind of the essence of what we've created with our facility here. Being built in the early 2000s, it's a pretty new winemaking facility compared to a lot of the other wine regions. So we have a really state-of-the-art winemaking facility that was set up really uniquely, that we have multiple tiers. So we receive grapes up on the top level, and we can actually use gravity to do a lot of the jobs that pumps would do in other wineries. So we can gravity feed it through the press and through destemmers and get it down onto the actual cellar floor, which is kind of built into the hillside. So the winery itself is actually really unique as far as the setup on the production side of things. And then on the hospitality side of things, we have this beautiful setting that overlooks a PGA tournament golf course. We have a beautiful terrace here. You guys can see in some of these pictures some of the events that we've done. We have obviously a lot of weddings, corporate events, being so close to Silicon Valley. But one of the really cool things that we've had set up for the past few years, I guess more pre-COVID than now, but we have a really great partnership with a local country radio station that has ties back to Nashville. So we do a summer country concert series here, and we've been able to get some top talent. For those of you that are familiar with country, we've had Dan and Shay, we've had Dan Perry, Casey Musgraves, Walker Hayes, Brian Moore. We've had a ton of really top talent, and it's really cool because being that we're a little bit of a smaller facility compared to the arenas that these bands usually play in, you know, it's a really intimate setting. You're sitting on the lawn right in front of them. They've got an acoustic guitar, and they're, you know, playing some of the top hits that you hear on the country radio station around the nation. So really cool to be able to kind of mix this state-of-the-art winemaking facility with our own bottling line, with all of the equipment that we can use to produce really high quality wines, mixed with this event space and this beautiful setting for you to just come and have a glass of wine, look over the vineyards, look over the golf course, and really enjoy the setting itself. So really fun, unique environment that we've created here.
Sounds like we need to book a WineStyles field trip.
I'm in. I'll host.
I was just going to ask, obviously with COVID and whatnot going on, you know, people kind of are somewhat back going and traveling a little bit. You know, are you guys, have you guys been back open? Can people still visit you now? Do they have to book in advance? How does that work out?
Yeah, for a while we were shut down, which was pretty tough. Our local county rules were really strict. So we were shut down for the better part of probably about 8 to 9 months. And we couldn't have anybody, appointment only, nothing. But slowly we were able to open back up by appointment only. We're now back up to fully open. There are still local mask mandates and everything for indoor, but we are back open to full capacity. So we're still doing daily tastings in the tasting room. Any of the events that we have are limited in the amount of people. So they're not quite what they were pre-COVID, but luckily we are back open. We're able to host concerts. We're able to host events and get people actually back into the winery and taste some of these wines. So it was a very quiet time around the winery for a while, but good to have everybody back in and tasting. All right, we can go to the next one there.
Oh, that's pretty.
So this is, as you guys saw where the concert was, the stage. This is the view from behind them. So the people sitting on the lawn looking at the stage, this is directly behind the stage. So this is our estate vineyard with the golf course you see in the background there. We have 150 acres on our estate, as I said, planted to 18 different varietals, ranging from all 5 Bordeaux's to several Rhone varietals, Zinfandel, Primitivo. We have several whites, Viognier, Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, Marsanne, a lot of the wines that you'll see in these blends here today. We're located in the Santa Clara Valley, as I said, which for reference, we're about 20 minutes south of San Jose and Silicon Valley and about 30 minutes north of Monterey County. So we're kind of right in the middle of San Jose and Monterey there, and just a really unique historic wine grape growing region, which we'll definitely talk a little bit more about. But one of the things that we're really passionate about is our sustainability certification. So it's kind of a newer thing in not just the wine industry, but all over. You see certified sustainable forestry or sustainable fishing, or, you know, sustainability is kind of a buzzword, you know, throughout many industries. But as far as the wine industry, we actually kind of been one of the pioneers of the movement in California wine industry for sustainability. And we're actually one of the first 17 wineries in the state of California to be certified both vineyard and winery by the Wine Institute and the California Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance. So something I've been kind of spearheading for the last 10 years or so since we started the certification, but something that we don't just preach, we actually practice, and we actually do the things that it takes. And, you know, for those that aren't really familiar with what, you know, sustainability, especially in the wine industry, means, you know, a lot of people say, well, what's an organic wine? What's a biodynamic wine? How does sustainability kind of fit into this whole thing? And really, sustainability is the umbrella over all of those. So organic, biodynamic, they focus on what's going into the soil and what's going into the wine. And that's about it. So sustainability looks at that, what's going into the soil, what's going into the wine, but it also takes into account what's your greenhouse gas emissions, what's your energy usage, how much water are you using, what's your community involvement, how do you treat your employees? All of that goes into a 247-point audit that we do annually that actually certifies us as sustainable. So it looks at how many tractor passes you're actually doing to mow or spray, or you know, how are you using your water? Can you recycle it? Do you have efficient light bulbs? You know, all of that stuff goes into it, and it's creating a more sustainable industry, a more sustainable environment, and a more sustainable business for us as far as economic viability, as well as social equity, and especially environmentally. So it's a really cool thing that a lot of industries are doing, but the wine industry is becoming, you know, one of the leaders and sort of at the forefront of what's going on in the sustainability movement, and something we're really passionate about. So how's that crisp tasting? Good? All right. I'll take the silence as good.
You know, I was trying to find my notes. I know a few of these we had a couple back and forths on, but if I remember correctly, this was one that was just like spot on or pretty darn close right away. I mean, it was kind of a fun exercise. You know, obviously we have our standard definitions of what we think crisp, silky, rich, fruity Melo Bold are, and we sent those to them, as well as kind of our traditional food pairings with those. And it was pretty amazing to see how close and spot on many of these were at the very first pass, but then also how quickly they were able to dial in the flavor profiles with the feedback that we had, Brian, Matt, myself, gave with these wines and our observations, and trying to get to the flavor profile that we wanted them to be. So, I mean, it was a really fun process to kind of to think about. But again, I think this was one that you guys just nailed, like right off the bat.
Yeah, it's really cool opportunity. We've, you know, done a few small private labels or some things locally and for different markets around the nation, but it's really cool to actually have, you know, people that are involved and are passionate about it and actually care, versus, you know, a resort or somebody that comes to you and says, we'd like a private label Merlot, make it for us, put our label on it, send it to us. In this circumstance, you know, I played around with wines for weeks. I put together different blends with our winemaking team. You know, we sent them out and the feedback came back, and it was, some of them were spot on. This is great, perfect, don't touch it, we love it. Other ones were, well, you know, it's a good wine, but it's really not hitting our flavor profile, or maybe it's a little too much of this, or it's not big enough, or it's not fruity enough, or what have you. So it's a really cool process to actually have a collaboration and be able to go back and forth and get the feedback. Because, I mean, I say this a million times as a winemaker, I can make wines that I like, I can make wines that I know, you know, my friends and family like, or even the people in our tasting room like, but I'm not necessarily the one that's out in the wine shop, or the one that talks to consumers every single day. And, you know, working with people that know their customer, know their consumer, know what they like, what styles that are going to sell and people enjoy. I mean, it's a really cool opportunity to get that feedback, because I can create a wine that I say, this wine's perfect, I love it, it's beautiful, don't touch it, and I can send it out and they go, that's a nice wine, but it's not right for our program, or it's not right for our customer base. So it was a really fun process to be able to have that collaboration and go back and forth. Absolutely. So let's jump to the next wine then and take a look at the Silky, so we can keep your guys' glasses full. We know how to do that. So first of all, the blend on the Silky, which is a really pretty wine, maybe one of my favorites in the lineup, is 50% Viognier, 40% Sauvignon Blanc, and 10% Marsanne. Again, a little bit about each varietal. The Viognier itself is just this beautifully bright floral style of white wine that has some oomph to it. It's not like a Chardonnay or an oaky style of white wine that a lot of the backbone comes from the oak or from some of the things that you do in the winemaking process. Viognier naturally is viscous, naturally has really thick skins, really good tannic structure. So it naturally has weight. And then the aromatics on it are second to none in any white varietal, maybe aside from a Riesling or something that's a little bit more geared towards that style. But the Viognier is just this bright, effervescent, just beautifully floral wine. Sauvignon Blanc, like I said, Central Coast style, very citrus focused, your lemon lime, your Rhine, and a hint of that grass. But what's cool about this one is I was able to bring in some of the Marsanne off our property, which is a really cool varietal to work with because it's that weird kind of in-between varietal that has some creaminess to it, has some really crisp brightness to it. And really it's very bendable. You can kind of do what you want with it, but it's always going to have its distinct and unique characteristic. And one of the things we love doing with our Marsanne is utilizing neutral oak. And what that does is it lets the Marsanne oxidize a little bit. It lets the oxygen kind of flow in between the barrels. And really that rounds out the creaminess on the palate. So it doesn't necessarily need that big oaky influence of a big brand new French oak barrel that's going to give you almond and nutty and oaky sweet characteristics. Just a little bit of that neutral barrel will actually bring out some of the oak tannin that's naturally still going to be in the oak, but it really rounds out some of the tannins that are in the wine itself and softens them because of the oxidation process itself. And then what we do is we do a little bit of stirring, a little bit of sur-lie with it. So that reincorporates the lees that naturally settles to the bottom. And again, rounds out the palate, gives it this creaminess to it. So it really blends well with, some of the more astringent and bright and floral characteristics of the Viognier. And it really creams it out and it makes it a lot smoother. And, for lack of a better term, it makes it a lot silkier to actually smooth down the palate itself. So a really rounded out nice wine. With this one, we did just about 10% or so of new oak, and then the rest was neutral oak, and a little over half of it was done in stainless steel tanks as well. So again, it's that blend of getting just a little bit of that creaminess from the oak while preserving some of that bright freshness from a stainless steel fermentation and aging process. So next, we'll jump into a little bit more about where we are and a little bit about kind of our terroir and the region and the grapes themselves. This is a really cool little map to kind of show everybody. A lot of times I say, oh yeah, Santa Clara Valley, we're south of San Jose and north of Monterey. People don't really have an idea of where exactly that is. So you can see in the red writing there where we are in comparison to the Bay Area as well as Monterey County itself. So we're kind of smack dab right in the middle there. And as I said, we're right on the other side of the Santa Cruz Mountain Range, just off the coast. So the unique coastal influence with the valley warmth is really what sets this valley apart from a lot of the other regions in California. When you come into the winery on a summer day, it could be middle of July, middle of August, the fog will actually be sitting right in the vineyard. It'll be 8, 9, 10 a.m. before the fog lifts, and it's cool. It's 50, 60 degrees, and quickly by 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we could be up to 95, 100 degrees. So we have this really unique diurnal temperature swing, which is perfect, absolutely perfect for growing premium wine grapes, because that cool temperature at night, the cool temperature in the morning actually preserves the natural acid in the grapes themselves. As it gets hot, acid goes down, sugars go up. That's sort of the natural process of ripening a grape. Acids go down, sugars go up. And we want to find that balance. We need the sugars to go up. That's when it gets its ripeness. That's when it gets a lot of its flavor compounds. But preserving that natural acid allows me as a winemaker in the cellar to kind of step back and let it do its thing. I mean, the minimalistic winemaking style of the less is more as far as winemaking is really what we're going for here. And if I don't have to add acid in the cellar during fermentation or during aging, all the better. It's naturally preserved acid in the wine itself. So that's one of the really great things about the climate, the uniqueness of where we are. But this is something that was figured out, over 150, 200 years ago. The Santa Clara Valley actually was one of the first wine growing regions in the entire state of California. It was the mission systems when they came through pre-prohibition. They had planted grapes in this very valley here long before there was a Napa or a Sonoma or a Paso Robles of the world. It was actually one of the first. So they recognized pretty early that this was the perfect valley. This was the perfect region to plant wine grapes. And they were producing wine and supplying wine out of mission grapes up and down the state of California for all the missions. So it has a lot of history behind it, which is really cool. And when the owners actually found this area and they were partnering with some people to build this beautiful winery and plant these 150 acres of estate grapes, it was actually zoned for agriculture, specifically for wine grapes because of the history in the valley. So it was really cool to be able to kind of reinvigorate the valley and bring wine grapes back after 200 plus years of not having anything here. And it's got this unique setup where it runs perpendicular to the coastal influence. So as the fog comes over the mountains and it comes in, the winds kind of come down the valley, and it not only creates this very unique kind of bowl setup for the fog to sit, but in the afternoon when it does heat up, the wind comes through the valley actually perfectly. Not really strong winds or anything too crazy, but kind of dries off that dew from the fog. And it's actually, if you were to write in a script or dial up exactly what you're looking for with the coastal influence and the fog and the light breeze in the afternoon and the 95-degree days, it's exactly what you would, as a winemaker or a wine grower, you would specifically look for. So having that set up has really been the unique success that we've created, and been able to create these really beautiful award-winning wines. And Santa Clara Valley isn't necessarily the sexiest name when you're talking about wine out there, but in a few years, in 10 years, it'll be up there, I'm sure, with some of the best, as more and more wineries are coming online in the valley and people are realizing the quality that we're getting out of the area.
One of the things I really love about what you do, Jason, is, as you said, you guys are embracing the concept of farmer first. You're not in the winery creating chemistry experiments, which is such a problem right now in the wine industry. I don't think we've ever seen a greater degree of wine production embracing manipulation. And we're getting away from the idea that, wine is the only alcoholic beverage that does not require any human intervention. Broken skin on fruit creates wine. And if you really are able to create a beautiful fruit in the vineyard and let nature take its course, you're going to make beautiful wines. And I love the fact that you approach things from a more old school, old world sensibility, but embracing what this area has to offer. It's I think what really makes this estate amazing, and it's definitely in the right hands, with your understanding of how incredibly important that is to make great wine.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point to make. Is the wine is one of the only alcoholic beverages that you don't have to do anything. You could throw grapes into a bucket and walk away and come back and it's going to be wine. But to be able to start in the vineyard and be a farmer first, essentially, and make sure that the grapes that you're producing are going to lend to really high quality wine is a really important thing, because you hear winemakers talk about it all the time. It starts in the vineyard, but it really does start in the vineyard. I can make a decent wine out of bad grapes, but I can't make a great wine out of bad grapes, and vice versa. You can make a mediocre wine out of great grapes. So there has to be that balance, but it all starts there. I have to have the great grapes. I have to have the farming background, the farming behind it before we can really put it together. And wine is that ultimate blend of art and science. You can get the science perfect, You can run every test. You can get the acid exactly where you want it, sugars where you want it, alcohol where you want it. You can even get tannins and different flavor profiles exactly where you want them through different enzymes and different manipulations in the cellar. But really, the art comes in when you utilize different toasts in the barrels, you use different forests in the barrels, you actually taste and you blend the wines, and you make manipulations during fermentation by tasting. You can say that it looks perfect chemically, but if you taste it and it's not quite there, you can make changes even though it's chemically perfect. So it's a really cool product in that it is that blend of art and science. Get the science right, get the art right, you put it together, and then you can create some really beautiful wines. All right, let's jump to the next one then. So next we have the rich wine, which is a blend of 70% Chardonnay and 30% Sauvignon. This is a really cool one because this one is actually the only one that goes 100% into French oak barrels, but it's a very classic kind of old world style of blend. The rich wine that we're going for, I think this is the one that we may have toyed around a little bit with because we were using some Chenin Blanc and we're using some other varietals that we were trying to, balance out the Chardonnay and make it not just a Chardonnay wine. And we really settled on bringing the Semillon in because the Semillon is, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's a very flabby wine. And that's what it's great for. That's what it's perfect for in blending because it can really balance things out. So with the Chardonnay itself, it's out of Monterey County. It is actually one of the few varietals, or I guess one of two varietals that we don't grow on our property. Where we are, as I said, we have the coastal influence, but during the day it gets a little too hot for Chardonnay. And our philosophy with all of our wines are if we're not going to do it great, if it's not going to perform great on our property, we're not going to do it. I mean, there's no point. But we're lucky enough to have Monterey County just 30 minutes down the road. Monterey County is one of the top producing, highest quality Chardonnay regions in the entire world. So we have the disposal of one of the best Chardonnay regions in the world just down the street. So we work with some really great growers down there to be able to source the Chardonnay and be able to, manipulate it to the style we want. Chardonnay is so versatile. You have, 10, 15 years ago, everything was naked. Everything was stainless steel. Everybody wanted their stainless steel Chardonnays. And, 25 years ago, everything was the oakier, the more butter, the better. I mean, that's what they wanted. And really what's happened, probably in the last 5 to 10 years is kind of that bridge. Everybody's kind of come back to the middle. Your typical Chardonnay drinker is expecting it to be oaky, have some butter. I mean, that's what most Chardonnay drinkers are looking for, but that's not what they want. They don't want just butter. They don't want just oak. They want kind of that Chardonnay characteristic, but with some fruit to it. And Monterey County, is known for its fruit characteristics. It's stone fruits, it's slate, it's, rocky kind of earthy characteristic. So if you can blend that with just the right amount of oak, just the right amount of malolactic fermentation, and then use a varietal like Semillon, which, kind of tones everything back. It adds, a little bit more weight to the palate, adds a little bit more width to the palate, but it doesn't step on the Chardonnay grape itself. So it's a really good example of what you can do with a Chardonnay grape using Semillon to make it rich, make it more full, make it actually a full-bodied wine without that full body being sucking on an oak plank or eating a handful of popcorn. So it's a really great example of bringing these two characteristics together, these two varietals together to make a really palatable, beautiful wine that didn't scream oak, didn't scream Chardonnay, but had the oomph in the body that a lot of people are looking for when they're going for this style of white wine in comparison to Sauvignon Blanc or a crisp or something like a Viognier that is a little bit more linear, has its avenue, has its alley, but it gives you a completely different spin on a white wine.
Yeah, I thought this was a great example of a blend that you wouldn't typically find, in a rich blend. And obviously Semillon is typically blended with Sauv Blanc or, it's more of a Bordeaux style. And the other challenge we always run into with some of these rich wines that fall in that category is that they're either too buttery, too oaky, too over the top. They don't have that fruit. They don't have the balance, or they have the balance and everything's just completely disjointed. It doesn't marry well. It doesn't fit together like the pieces of the puzzle. And I think this wine does fit together very well, and you get all of those components. Not one is overpowered, and not one outshines each other. You definitely get the richness of it, but yet all of the other things that make this wine wonderful are equal parts to making a good wine.
Definitely. That was well put. Absolutely.
The original blend that you sent us had, I think you said Chenin Blanc, might have had some Viognier in there too. I can't remember exactly the blend, the first blend. Again, I was trying to find my notes before we started. I was kind of like, once we found the wines, once we settled on the wines, I didn't need to keep them, but I remember it had a couple different things in it, and we kind of dialed it back, or you dialed it back for us and said, let's just try this one. And the second time it came through, we're like, yep, that's the one.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely how I remember it. And again, if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat there, and Jeff can probably throw them at me as we go along. And we'll just keep moving through these wines now. And we'll move on to the reds. So we've got up first is the fruity here. This is a really cool one because, as a winemaker, I get the question all the time, well, what wines do you like? What wines do you drink? What's your favorite wine? And, my candid response pretty much every time is, well, I like them all. They're all my kids. I mean, I don't have a favorite child, so I love them all equally. But there are definitely wines that I gravitate towards that I at home, drink more often than others. And by far and away, those are Central Coast Rhones. I mean, it's Central Coast from, here, Livermore, down to Paso Robles, down to Santa Barbara. I mean, they're just known for their Rhone varietals because they grow so well. I mean, the Mediterranean climate does well with equally as much the Rhone Valley. And there's a reason why, in the 70s, the Rhone Rangers fired up and everything was Syrah, Grenache, GSM, and you saw them all over the place. And it's because they just perform so well in this area. And Santa Clara Valley is no different. While, Cab may be our flagship and we have tons of beautiful Bordeaux varietals, the Rhones they're just rock stars. And Grenache is at the forefront of it. Grenache is another one of those unique varietals that can go a lot of different ways. I've had Grenaches out of the east side of Paso Robles that are, tannic and huge and inky and dark and overpowering. And that's definitely not the style that I think Grenache should go into. And it's not the style of our Grenache by any means. The Grenache off our property is very light, very elegant. It's almost closer to a Pinot Noir than anything else. But it's probably one of my favorite wines to work with because it is so versatile. I mean, you can use it in so many different blends, but it can be great as a standalone. So this particular fruity blend was 60% Grenache, 30% Syrah, and then 10% Carignan, all varietals that we have on our estate. And as I said, perform really well in the climate that we have. As far as wine production, these are varietals that I tend to be a little bit more hands-off on and that I treat a little bit softer and a little bit more elegant. For those of you that aren't really that familiar with what red wine production, after the grapes come in, they're destemmed. We get the skins, the seeds, the juice, everything goes into the tank. And really what we're doing there is we're soaking out the color, the flavor, the tannins, everything that we want that's in the skins, in the seeds. We get that all into the tank and we get it soaking. And I kind of like that too. Infusing your favorite vodka. If you want a cucumber vodka, you get your vodka, you put your cucumbers in there. The longer you hold it, or the more cucumbers you put in it, the more you're going to get out of it, the more you're going to create it. And it's very similar with the skins and the seeds in a red grape. You're going to get that extraction that's going to happen not only while we're soaking it, but during the fermentation process. But if you're not trying to get too much out of it, if you're not creating a big giant Petit Verdot or Cabernet or something that's huge, we can actually treat it a lot more gentle during the fermentation process. So as the fermentation kicks off, the skins naturally want to rise to the top. They float. So what we need to do during fermentation is we either have to pump the juice, called a pump over, from the bottom of the tank to the top of the tank with a little irrigator, or we can actually do what's called a punch down, and physically submerge the skins back in. So with these varietals, that's what we do. It's a little bit more gentle. It doesn't go through a pump. It's not getting sprayed through a sprinkler. We're just gently pushing the skins back in, and we're creating that extraction. And what that does is it doesn't break apart the skins. It doesn't break apart the seeds. It keeps them mostly intact. So it's a very soft, very gentle extraction. And that's why it's more of a softer, more elegant style of wine, and especially on the Grenache, which creates, you know, this fruity, beautiful, lighter tannin, you know, a lot more see-through, more opaque as far as the color goes, and not this big inky dark wine itself. So Grenache tends to be, you know, really fruit forward. It's got your bright cherries, bright strawberry, a little bit of cranberry, and then Syrah brings a little bit more of an earthy gaminess to the wine itself. It's often, you know, described as meaty, and what that does is just gives the wine a little bit of backbone, but it offers that depth and a little bit more complexity to the wine. And then Carignan is one of the best blenders we have on the property, because it is such a unique grape to work with. It has spiciness, but it also has really dark fruit to it. And it can have like a cola or cherry cola characteristic to it. So it really brings just this other layer, this depth. And this is one of those wines where you can swirl it around, you can sip it, you can set it down. 10 minutes later, you come back and go, whoa. I mean, it was bright strawberries at first, but now I'm getting this really, you know, cola cherryness to it. And then you have a sip, and it's got this like gamey meatiness on the palate. And so it's a really fun, unique blend. And like I said, I mean, Rhones in this area are just absolute rock stars and beautiful wines to work with. So to be able to put together, you know, a Rhone style of blend that showcases the Grenache and the bright fruit and the red cherry and the strawberry and cranberry is a really cool and fun blend to put together. And it's just a great everyday drinker. It doesn't have to stand up to a big piece of meat. You can sit on the porch, but it also does great with food as far as the structure of it and pairing. So it's a really fun one.
One of the things we try to do, you know, whether we're picking wines for wine club or semi-private labels, whatever it might be, we try to taste them kind of in a semi-blind format. Usually I'm the gatekeeper of the information, so proposals and things get sent to me. Matt and Brian and other folks that we have try the wines and select them. I try to have them do them completely blind, so they're not judging them based on who the producer is, what the grapes are, what the price point might be. I sort of have them do that, and then I tell them afterwards what program we're tasting it for. Unfortunately, we didn't do this with this wine. This was one of those, we saw the varietals, were like, really fruity? That's the grape varietals we're going to use for fruity? Because like you said, traditionally, California Grenache and Syrah in particular tend to be that heavier New World, in-your-face style, kind of like New World California Cab is. But that's that Central Coast influence, where it's a little bit more restrained. It's a little bit more Old World. It's a little less high alcohol, whereas a lot of the California wines get jacked up when it comes to that sort of thing. So this was a pleasant surprise, like you said, when we tasted and tried it. Having that immediate, like, just, hey, this is great with pizza. This is great with, you can have it with chicken, you can have it with pork, you could have it with a piece of meat if you want. It's an incredibly versatile wine, and not overly tannic, not overly alcoholic, and just, again, super balanced as well. Do you question? This is one of the things I thought. One question that I had. Obviously, you guys make a lot of your own wine under your own labels. Do you guys make 100% Carignan?
Oh, it's so funny. That's what I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I love that grape.
Yeah, that is one of the cool and unique things about our, not necessarily a philosophy, but a lot of our programs is we try to, especially for, if it's the Clos LaChance Reserve, tasting room, wine club stuff, what we do is we create a certain amount of 100% or varietal wines per year based on what was the rock star for that year. So I've had years where I've brought in grapes and I've said, the Merlot of all things, Merlot was the rock star this year. It's one of my favorite wines we brought in. Merlot's a 90 plus point. It's a beautiful wine, and we run with that. That's one of the reserves. Cab's a staple. All these things. So Carignan is one of those, you know, kind of on the fringe, where in years where it's a rock star and we bring it in and it's beautiful by itself, 100%, don't touch it. It goes into a reserve program. We make 100% Carignan. It's in there. So we have so many varietals on the estate that we like to rotate them as well. So we've done 100% Carignan, I think 4 times. I want to say 4 times in the last 10, 12 years or so. So it's not something we do every year, unless the grape warrants it. The grape says, leave this alone, don't touch me, put it in the tasting room and let everybody enjoy this. But we're also lucky enough that we can do that on a small scale. We can do a few hundred cases or what have you for the tasting room, and then we can utilize it in blends like this. So in this particular year, we did do 100% Carignan for our direct-to-consumer, but we also have others that we can utilize to make some really cool blends as well.
Quiet crowd tonight. No questions, no comments yet. That's fine. They're enjoying the wine.
They're too busy drinking.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
I can't stop.
They're enjoying the wine. I like it. All right, well then let's jump to the Melo, which is another really cool, unique blend. And again, varietals we have on the property here: 60% Primitivo, 30% Zinfandel, and 10% Alicante. These in normal circumstances, normal years, kind of like what we've done here with the Melo, are pretty cool blenders that we utilize in a lot of red blends we put together. We do 100% Zinfandel. We've done 100% Primitivo as well. But really what we utilize these for are blends for projects like this, for our own Clos LaChance red blends, for other wines that we have, because they're all unique within their own, but they play together so well. These 3 I work with, along with Petit Syrah is another one that I kind of put into the same category a lot of the time. They play off of each other as far as the structure, aromatics, you know, flavor profiles. They've always just worked really well together. You know, your Primitivo tends to be a little bit more of that really bright fruit. So you get your bright cherries, you get your raspberries, and then Zinfandel is your classic California Zinfandel. It's got some spice to it. It's got a little bit of pepper. Again, it brings a little bit of fruit to it, but more than anything, it brings that spice. And then Alicante. This is a fun one because most of you probably haven't ever held a bunch of Alicante Boucher grapes in your hands, but Alicante grapes themselves are blood red. If you grabbed a Zinfandel grape and you squeezed it between your fingers, it'd be, you know, pinkish, you know, mostly like if you bit into a red flame grape, table grape, you know, it's somewhat clear pulp. Alicante is not like that at all. The pulp itself, everything inside is blood red. It'll stain your hands red. So the color, the structure is really what Alicante brings to the table. It has a lot of very similar characteristics to Zinfandel as far as spiciness. It has allspice, you know, some of the baking spices that are naturally in there, but really the color, the structure, the tannins that it brings to the table are second to none. And that's a lot of times why you'll see it in 10%, 2%, 8%, 5%. Because if you went too far to the other way, if you went 100%, it would just be this inky blood red wine that was just spicy in your mouth. And while it's unique and it's fun and it's a really cool wine to make, as a blender, it's just such a rock star. It just brings so much to the table and adds to the complexity of the wine and just makes it so unique. So
we've had a Portuguese one in our wine club, 100%. And
yeah.
And it was to your point. I mean, it was super bold, super rich, and it was very. I mean, it was interesting. But to your point, I think it was very. It takes probably a lot of hands-on experience with that grape to make it 100% varietal.
Yeah, absolutely. We because one of the things that we do here at the winery, we're lucky enough to do is we have a lot of varying size tanks. We have a really big barrel room, as you guys can see behind me here. So we keep everything separate as long as possible. We want to see what everything's going to bring to the table when we put blends together. So when I bring the Alicante in, I'm not just, okay, let's blend some here, blend some here, blend some here. It's 100% by itself until the day we decide, okay, we're going to make this Melo blend or we're going to make this other blend. And so as we're tasting through and I see it aging in barrel for a year, 16 months, 18 months, and we're tasting through, it's such a unique one to see it evolve, because from day one, post fermentation, get it in the barrel from 18 months, 20 months down the road in barrel, it is such a different wine. So it's one of those that you can really play around with and create a very unique, different style of wine for sure.
Well, the other interesting thing about this is for a long time, wine industry believed or thought that Primitivo and Zinfandel were the same grape, right? And they did DNA cloning, and if they found out they have a common parent, some Croatian or Czechoslovakian name that I can't even pronounce or begin to pronounce as the parent, but they're very, very close, and yet they still have their own little distinct characteristics.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people still kind of lump them together because they are very similar. But if you taste them, and we're lucky enough, I think I have 4 different Zinfandel clones on our property, as well as 2 different Primitivos. So I have the opportunity, again, because they're all kept separate, to be able to taste them. And they can be so uniquely different given the temperatures from that year and how much water we got and what kind of nutrient program we had. So while a lot of people like to put them together, they can be so varying and so widely different and really unique wines. So really, really fun to play with them and put them together, because they can be similar and they can blend well together, but they bring 2 completely different things to the table themselves, which is fun. Absolutely. And then kind of back just quickly on the production side of things with this, as I was saying with the fruity, while we're minimally extracting, we're doing the soft punch downs, we're trying to be as as lightly involved as possible. A lot of these varietals like Primitivo, Zinfandel, they need a little bit more. They have very thin skins actually, while some of the other varietals, Cabernet, Petit Verdot, they have really thick skins. So really what we're trying to do with these is actually beat them up a little bit more. So we'll run them a few extra pump overs throughout the day to get them through that pump and really break apart those skins. And that's where we're going to get a lot of the extraction, and we're going to get a little bit more out of them. So it's one of the fruity and the mellow, it's sort of an opposite approach to it, because they need a little bit of that extra to just get out about the same amount. They need to be beat up versus, caressed like the fruity itself. So pretty unique as far as the production side of things. Hopefully tasting good. You guys are chatting my ear off.
No worries. Obviously, so we went through this process, right? And so we picked the label, or we picked the wines, we settled on the grapes, the varietals, everything goes into it. And, I'm like any other person, all right, we're done. We're done with the process. Go ahead and make the wine. Let's put it in a bottle and send it to us. Meanwhile, Julie, who's on, obviously she's our director of marketing, and the folks on your end, marketing folks, had to develop the labels, the labels, the brands, everything goes along with it. And I'm like, as a non-creative person, I couldn't have been more out of my element with that, as far as that process. But there's also another thing that people don't realize is the amount of effort that went into the different potential artworks of how the wine is labeled, the capsules on the top, different color options, the front label, the back label, where actually the back label is really the front label, which people don't really realize, just all that process. And obviously you guys probably do that a lot more often than we do, but maybe to the extent possible, speak to that process a little bit and how involved it is, or how involved you normally are in that process, or you have people that do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more on your side, Jeff, than the other. I have the creative mind of physically doing something. I can, break down, what's going on in the vineyard or what we need to do in the cellar to get things going. But on the creative side of things, that's well beyond me. Luckily, we have marketing and creative folks to handle all that. But as far as the logistics side of things, it is a pretty, it's a government regulated product. It has alcohol in it. So it's a pretty intensive process as far as what they allow, how big fonts can be, what needs to be, as you said, on the front label, which is actually the back label, because that's where all the technical information is, alcohol percentage, sulfite statement, barcodes, appellation, all of that kind of stuff. And that's, from the labeling side of things, it's somewhat of a template, exactly what needs to be there. You need to fill in the boxes. But from a creative side of things, you need not only the wine to speak to your consumer and to the market, but it needs to speak to what's in the bottle. If you're going to create this, elegant old world style white classic label, that has to be what's in the bottle and the style of wine you're going for, as well as the consumer. But if you want to create something unique wines with Viognier and Chenin Blanc and, different varietals that people don't gravitate towards because they've never tried them, you need to create a unique package, something that grabs their eye and they say, that looks pretty cool. I want to grab a bottle of that. Oh, it's got Viognier in it. I've never had Viognier before. I'm going to try it. So it's something that, on the creative side of things, you can't just think about what's a cool label going to look like, or what's a pretty label going to look like. What's it going to say to your consumer? What's it going to say to the wine that's actually in the bottle? And how's it going to get that consumer to come back and get another bottle? Because you can sell, one bottle and then they drink it and they forget about it and they walk away and they buy something different the next time. The ability to bring them back is a unique opportunity, and the wine, the package, everything needs to speak to that. Absolutely.
And then for us, it was the added. So obviously it looks one way in the slide, it looks another way when it's in your hand. And then for us putting it in our alcoves, what does the wine look like, as we put it on our shelf? And is that going to gravitate a customer towards that bottle versus all of the others that we have in the store? Certainly there's techniques that we, put this bottle at shoulder length and another one at up high or whatever it might be. But that was one thing that we had to do as well. They sent us sample bottles with the labels on them, with white wine in it, with red wine in it. We put it on our shelves. We send photos back to your team, to our team, so they could see it, and they have that input. And it's, again, one of those things that I was like, we picked the wine. I'm not sure why we're not done yet. So it was an interesting learning experience for us that have not done that. It was fun, but yet I'm glad we have the creative folks on that side to do that rather than us. So last wine.
Absolutely. Last wine. The bowl.
Did you have some?
Well, actually, I was just going to say that one of the things I really love about this project a lot, and you touched on this just briefly, Jason, is that we American consumers very commonly get caught up in the branding idea of a varietal. Cabernet. I love my Cabernet. I love my Chardonnay. I love my Sauvignon Blanc. And as you pointed out, when we really talk about trying to hit these really desirable expressions within the wine, it's going to require some unique blending. I mean, these are very unusual blends in terms of you don't normally see these grapes blended together. But when we really take, what the vineyard offers you in terms of what these grapes can express and blend them in this certain way, and then, you do your techniques with this use of oak or not oak, we end up with an expression that is delicious. But we have to almost trick everybody into trying it by utilizing the fact that we're working within the WineStyles systems of, silky, rich, bold, fruity. And this is what's so cool to me, is that we're using grapes that a lot of people would, not even take a second look at, in terms of it was labeled as Carignan or Petit Syrah or Semillon or Marsanne on the shelf. I mean, these grapes offer so much incredibly dynamic character. And I love when we give the consumer the opportunity to experience these things outside of just the fighting varietals. And, for me, I always like to try to remember as a wine consumer personally that there's so many different grapes out there to try, and they have so much to offer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very good point. All right. So the bold, last one here. Again, we utilized some of our Rhone varietals here. We played around a little bit on this one. I remember with, some Cabernet and some other, Bordeaux style of wines. And we kept gravitating back towards these Rhones that just are rock stars on the property, and they do well. And like we saw with the fruity, that we utilized a little bit of Syrah just to give it a little bit of a backbone, but not be overpowering. So it stayed true to that Grenache, that fruity characteristic. We really wanted to showcase that in the bold, because the Syrah is what, kind of gives the meat, gives the tannic structure, gives the palate presence to the fruity. In this case, it's showcase. It's front and center. It's the rock star of the blend. But then we've got these other varietals that Petit Syrah, for those of you that are familiar with Petit Syrah as a varietal wine, it's inky, it's dark, it's jammy, it's blueberry. It's a really, really cool varietal wine without being really tannic, which is really cool. It's not dry tannins like a Petit Verdot or something that's, a dry Cabernet. It has this jammy, juicy characteristic while having the tannins and having the weight and having the color. And then the Carignan is just what rounds out that spiciness, gives it that little bit of depth, gives it that complexity. So Syrah being the showcase, you're going to get the gaminess, you're going to get the meatiness, you're going to get more of the black cherry and the darker fruits to it. The Petit Syrah with the blueberry, and then the spice with the Carignan just really completely rounds it out. And again, it's kind of a blend in this world of the production styles, where Syrah, we don't have to beat it up too much to really get that extraction. Petit Syrah, pretty similar. You don't have to beat it up too much, although it does have a little bit thinner of skins, kind of towards that Zinfandel range. And then Carignan's one that you really got to extract it. You want to beat it up. You want to get in there. You want to do what you can to actually get the extraction. And then these ones, we do utilize a little bit of American oak in the cellar here, primarily for Cab Franc, Cabernet, some of the other varietals. These ones they love French oak. You have to stick with French oak. It's one of my philosophies with winemaking and blending and the production that we do here with our own varietals. Just stick to French oak, because as they say, the oak forest, same country as the grapes themselves, they just do really well together. And we get that really soft extraction out of it to let the grape itself showcase. So again, it's bold because the flavors itself are so unique and so big, and we can support that with the tannic structure. So we can give the French oak barrels to it. It can bring the wood oak or the oak tannins into the blend. But really what's showcasing here is all these bright fruit characteristics with the natural grape tannins that are juicy and long and wide, but not dry. So it's not necessarily a dried out style of wine. It's more of their big juicy style. And hopefully, one of your favorites in the line. I love working with Syrah, Petit Syrah. They're some of my favorites. So really, really great, bold, beautiful wine here. And good. I'm assuming everybody's tasting.
Everybody loves it. Yeah, no, I mean, I think like you said, we kind of started off with some of the traditional varietals that you would expect in a bold wine, Cab and Merlot and things like that. And we kind of came full circle with this blend. And again, it really kind of hits on the flavor profile. The other thing we did with our labeling, which was important to us, I don't have a bottle in front of me, but I believe the front label / back label has this little scan me code on there as well. So you can go there, you can scan it, jumps to our website with all of the descriptions of the wines. And then we also included the style description of the wine on the back label as well, which is really nice. Alan in our Johnston, Iowa store, any aging comments on the wines as far as both aging of the wines that went into the blend or aging potential of the wines moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the red wines kind of across the board, we're right around 18 months or so as far as the aging in barrel. That's not necessarily rule of thumb. We kind of, take every blend, every vintage itself into account. Some years, it might have been a little bit warmer. The tannin structures might have been really big in the grapes, and they're not going to hold up to sitting in barrel for a long time because they're just going to keep soaking up more and more tannin. So we try to get them off earlier. Vice versa. If we need to soak up more, if we even need to go a little bit more new oak or what have you, age them a little bit longer to soften out that oak tannin in the barrel, we'll do that. So our typical aging for a lot of our red wines are 16 to 24 months or so, and these ones all landed right about 18. And then as far as aging in bottle, the screw cap on the fruity is a little bit different than the other two. As I always say with screw cap wines, essentially you're freezing that wine in time. So when you drink that, that's how the winemaker intended you to enjoy that wine. It's not meant to lay down in the cellar for 10 years and see how it ages or how it adapts. It's a fruity, it's a beautiful, light, elegant style of wine. Drink it now, drink it for the next 2-3 years, no problem. It'll be great. There's been plenty of studies done, mainly in Australia, who are kind of the pioneers of the screw caps, that, they've laid down screw cap Sauvignon Blancs out of Australia for 10-15 years, and they tasted great. The screw cap just holds well. And then on your mellow and bold, drink now. They're beautiful. They're great wines. Age, no problem, 3 to 5+ years, because they're wines that are going to adapt. You're going to land down. They're going to change, and they're going to get better, and they're going to offer different unique characteristics to them as the tannins start to break down, the acids break down. They're going to soften over time, but definitely wines that you can enjoy now and for the next 3 to 5 years, no problem.
Yeah, and then as I kind of pointed out when I first started talking, these are wines that will continue to be around, for the foreseeable future in our WineStyles stores. When we do normally our winery spotlights, we obviously feature 6 wines. And then we try to pick like the 2 or 3 quote unquote winners from those spotlights for them to stick around in each store. With these wines being specifically made for us and continuing to use them move forward, they will be around for the foreseeable future. That doesn't mean don't buy them now. Don't hold off. Definitely kind of buy them tonight and share them with your friends, and hopefully we get a nice little following for them as well. Julie asked, and I think probably this is a rhetorical question to everybody involved, maybe kind of a semi-poll for those stores that are there, is, was there any favorites from the wines? Crisp, silky, rich, Robideaux, bold, sort of any favorites from those. So you can kind of chime in there in the comments if you can, store owners. And then the other thing before I let these folks go, this is something that was quite an amazing project for us to be able to do. There's not a lot of places out there that would say, hey, we're going to partner with you and make you guys your own specific wine brand, for lack of a better term, to share. And so this was an incredibly large undertaking for everybody involved. We appreciate the work that David and Jason did on this. I think the wines are stellar. These are things that I'm going to be having at my dinner table for the foreseeable future, because I love them, and they just kind of kick that style off, which is great. So thank you guys for doing that. Thank you for taking the time to share your time and tell your story. One of the things that I hope we can do in the future down the road is obviously share some of the wines that you make specifically under the Clos LaChance brand as well. Maybe we'll have kind of a return event and do a spotlight with some of those wines that you've talked about that you love to make as well. So with that being said, I do want to talk a little bit about what we have coming up next. We go to great lengths to pick winery spotlight partners, and we rely very heavily a lot on our different store owners for suggestions. And one of the wineries we're going to be featuring coming up next month, and see if I have the date here correctly, is February 16th at 6 p.m. again. And so we'll be featuring a winery that Arthur Lampros, our owner in our Montclair, Virginia store, suggested. It's an event he's done, I think, every single year for the last 2 or 3 years. It's a winery that he features, and he does a huge event for him, and he suggested this winery. It's I'm going to mispronounce it, Remhogte, I believe is how you pronounce it. He might jump in and correct me here as well. But Chris and Rob, the wine owners from there, will be on. They'll be sharing their story. It's a winery out of Stellenbosch, South Africa. As I've stressed very, very often, South African wines are awfully misunderstood and greatly undervalued. These wines will definitely outkick their coverage when it comes to price to quality ratio. And there's some really special wines that he curated for us to share in this spotlight. And so we're super excited to share that. Definitely look for that date. Many of the stores have already published that event. If they haven't already, look at their Facebook page, look at their email blast as well. I know some of that stuff will be coming out fairly soon for February 16th. So Jason, Chris, or Jason, David, anything to share with us before we part ways?
No, just that we're really happy to be partnered with you guys on this project. You guys and us, we go back quite a way, and I love what you guys do, and I'm just so glad that this conversation that started almost a year ago is finally coming to this beautiful fruition, and I'm really excited the wines are in your hands.
Yep. Yeah,
absolutely. I really appreciate you guys sharing the time and tasting the wines and listening to me babble on for an hour. But I had a lot of fun, and thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everyone,
everybody,
for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again next month, hopefully sooner.
Take care.
Thanks.